Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Teachers Tribe International Community. Today, we have someone very special with us. Educators, please welcome Elyana Zawaideh. Elyana has been part of the education system for past 20 years now. Over these years, she has done many hats, from a primary school teacher to a team leader. She is a concept based trainer and presenter, IDU BQC Reviewer, Global Schools Mentor, MYP 3 Language and Literature Teacher, MYP Coordinator for Languages, Arts, Individuals, and Societies. In today's session, she will throw light on effective ways of designing assessment to evaluate learning process. She will help us to find answers to the following questions. What do teachers assess? Why it is important to think critically about the purpose. How can teachers design assessment tasks? A few reminders before we get started. There'll be a link towards the end of this session which will enable you to earn a certificate for your presence. You can use the chat feature here. The presenter is going to answer your questions shortly. Here we go.
Hello, everyone. Hope you're all enjoying your day, wherever you are. Thank you, Anila, for your introducing me to begin with. And I would like to welcome you all and thank you all for attending our session for today. I'll just take a few minutes. If you can, let us know where you're watching us from, where are you attending, what grades are you teaching. It would be interesting to know who's our audience. Hello, Muhannad. How are you? So I think we have Muhannad today. Hello, Yassine as well.
I can see a number of people joining here, but they are joining really fast.
So if you can just tell us where are you from and which grades would you teach? Are you already teaching? It will help us when we're getting into our session, and it can shed some light regarding your subjects, regarding the grade levels that you're teaching. And definitely, we know it's a busy time of the year. Everyone, they're either doing assessments, they're ending the year, piles of correction, or you're enjoying your holiday. Hello from Pakistan. Hello, Ms. Duha. Ms. Duha worked with me before. Definitely, I'm glad to see your name popping up.
Oh, great.
So we have PYP teachers joining us today. So hope everyone's settling in. You have at least a paper next to you so you can jot down some ideas while we're working. And how about we start? And definitely we can read about which grades that you're teaching and where you're coming from throughout our session.
Let's get started. I think they are taking time to put in the details.
Okay, so how about we start? So our main session for today is how do teachers design assessments to evaluate the learning? And if everyone noticed, we just said designing assessment. We did not say summative assessment, because the minute we hear the word assessment, we immediately go in summative assessment, and this is what we need to do. So we'll talk about it today. As Anila already introduced me, I'm a certified concept-based trainer, IDU BQC Reviewer, MYP language and literature teacher, and I was Jordan's global school advocate for 2021, and a mentor now for 2022. If anyone is not aware, Global School Program is a program that advocates for integrating sustainable development goals into the curriculum. and actually helps teachers into integrating projects within their learning. I'm also a pen pal school ambassador. So our session objectives for today: what do teachers assess? So we'll be looking at the what, the why, and the how. So what do teachers assess? Why do you think it's important to think critically about the purpose? And how can teachers create assessment tasks to evaluate the learning? So we're looking into the different types of assessments. To begin with, I usually begin with my sessions with a diagnostic, let's say. This is the blob tree. It's a very good tool for you as teachers to conduct diagnostic assessments and even formative assessments. So if you can choose a number that would represent your knowledge and confidence, of course, regarding designing assessments, which number would you choose? So if you can use the chat feature, choose your number, and then on a small piece of paper, write down your number, because we'll tell you how you can switch this diagnostic assessment into a formative assessment. Just type in your answer within the chat feature. Let's say, are you a 3? Do you have a partner that's actually helping you in starting to design assessments you're still learning? Or are you confident of yourself? 12, that's interesting. So we have Ms. Duha, she's 12. She's sitting down happily with a partner, definitely supporting her within designing assessments. Are you at that time of the year where you're actually falling apart with the number of assessments you have because of the number of sections you're teaching? 17. Okay, that's interesting. I like the idea of everyone choosing a partner to be with, so you're all collaborating with other people. Good. 11. Very good. Again, we have partners as well. That's very good. So collaboration is the key when designing assessments, because we always like to have different partners to ask for their feedback, discuss their perspective. They might have a different idea that we don't know. It's a very good, these are very good numbers, by the way. So if you can keep the number on a small paper next to you, and we'll tell you how we can, this is a diagnostic. So we'll tell you how you can switch this diagnostic assessment to a formative assessment toward the end of the session. So let's think. What do we assess? Why do we assess? And how do teachers assess? This is the main idea we're looking at. So let's look at both images. And let's share our thoughts about what is being assessed. So if we look at the first image, we have the teacher. She has the blackboard behind her. And we have test on Friday. And the teacher is saying, class, I've got a lot of material to cover. So to save time, I won't be using vowels today. Language teachers, you must enjoy that. So what do you think the teacher is assessing here? Have a thought. Type it in the chat. Imagine if I go to my classroom tomorrow and I actually tell them that because of the teaching, I wouldn't do that. Spelling. Okay, interesting way. I haven't thought about it actually. Okay, so the teacher might be teaching spelling today. What else? She has a lot of material to cover. And to save time, she's not going to use the vowels. Imagine, the vowels are taking a lot of time for our teaching. Have a go. So spelling. Interesting. I would say facts. Let's say pages, maybe. Textbook that she needs to cover. Okay. How about we look at the second one? Your boss, your manager, your team leader comes in and they tell you that your evaluation is based on the next 30 seconds. Go. What do you think he is assessing here? You can type it in the chat. Okay, sorry, it's a vague one. Okay, so we have the boss coming in and they're telling you that your evaluation is based on the next 30 seconds. And you just go. You have to say something. What would you say? What could you be assessing? I would say they're assessing speed, or they might be assessing a certain skill. Nothing, we're not in a race. That's a good one. So we're not in a race. So probably just there for chat. That's a good one. Okay, how about we look at the next pictures. So we have math teachers. The first image. Keep it simple. The teacher is saying keep it simple. So what do you think that teacher is assessing? What is being assessed here? You can see numbers, equations, angles for people who enjoy math and solving problems in math. So what do you think is being assessed? So we might be assessing knowledge in math, equations, how we can answer, for example, a formula, how we can give the simplest form of an answer, learners' ability to solve problems. That's interesting. Connection to real life. Yes, that could be. Not so simple, so exactly, not so simple. This is the irony that goes within. How about we look at the next image? The next image we have the learner, and he's thinking, he gets it now. I wonder how else I can use this. And he's coming up with different thoughts. I know I can use it in math. He knows that this will help Paul with his problem and his car problem. And he bets his mom can actually use it in her computer science class. So what do you think? Analyzing graphs? Maybe it's not something simple. That's true. So it's a reflection of the learner. That's an interesting thought. So the learner, he's actually reflecting on the learning that took place within the lesson. What else? Any other ideas? So if we looked at the four images, so some of us said spelling, ability to solve problems, interpreting graphs and looking at graphs, probably brainstorming ideas on how to solve, students reflecting on their own learning as well. So we have a lot of ideas regarding those images and regarding what the teacher is actually assessing every single time. So every single time, the assessment is actually different. So the main idea we're talking about today is about assessments and what do teachers assess and how do we actually design assessments. And I thought the best way is actually sharing a quote from a book. It's Learning That Transfer by Julie Stern. The main idea of assessment is we are talking about a way of monitoring the quality of our teaching. I think that sums it up. And the quality of the students' learning through constant feedback loops aligned to our goal of transfer. So quality of teaching, quality of students' learning, and the goal is to transfer. And I think transfer is the key term here because we hear a lot of teachers saying our students can transfer. So throughout the session, we're going to look at what does transfer actually means and how can we actually help teachers help students to learn how to transfer. So what do teachers assess? This was the main key that we started with. So teachers assess understanding, they assess skills, and they assess knowledge. Mainly, the teachers are looking for a process to collect evidence of learning, anything that will help us show that yes, our students are learning. And we're going to go into each term now in order to make sure that we all have common understanding on what is knowledge and what is a skill and what is an understanding. So knowledge, simply, what do I know? So we're looking at definitions of terms, vocabulary terms. We're looking at facts. So we're looking at definitions of terms. What is matter, for example? What is literature? What is genre? What is geography? We're looking into facts. What do students actually know? Earth revolves around the sun, for example. The water boils at 100 degrees. 1 + 1 = 2. These are all facts that we know our students know. So if I'm assessing knowledge, I'm assessing my students' ability to understand the term, to understand the concept, to know certain facts that will be needed for the next level of learning. So how about that? Use the chat as well. And I need you to write a question, have a go with a question. Write a question that assesses knowledge in your discipline. So how about that? Give us a question that assesses knowledge in your discipline. Ask about a definition of a term. You can either refer to a unit you're already teaching, a unit that you taught and you're almost done with, or a unit that you're planning. What are some of the terms your students need to know? What is the fact or the list? What are the list of facts that your students need to know? So this is knowledge. We'll give you a few minutes. And Neela, you're a PYP teacher. What do you think? What could be a question that assesses knowledge in your own discipline? State what DNA stands for. List figurative devices you've learned today. Interesting. So figurative devices you've learned today, this is knowledge. What does DNA stand for? So again, we're looking into definitions of terms. Very good. So this is knowledge. Let's see skills. What do you mean by skills? I think Dr. Lynn Erickson, she stated very bluntly in her book, Concept-Based Curriculum Instruction for the Thinking Classroom, and you can refer to it. What is a subordinating conjunction? Interesting. What do you mean by fractions as well? So we have math and we have a lot of language teachers today. Okay, so for skills, Dr. Lynn Erickson said, skills are the smallest operations or actions that are embedded in strategies, and when appropriately applied, they allow these strategies to work. So these are the skills. For example, we ask students to identify important information in a paragraph or in an article. We ask students to identify patterns. We ask students, for example, to predict an ending for a story that we're reading, to scan a text in order to find an answer for a question, to count items. These are all skills. So we talked about knowledge, which is definitions, facts. For example, it's an asset. We can define assets as well, which is a subordinating conjunction. Thank you, William, and thank you, Yassine. Now, let's think about skills. How can we write a question that assesses skills in our discipline? Think about it. What is the smallest operation, the smallest action that your students will do in your own subject? I notice we have science teachers here. So usually science teachers, they interpret graphs. How can you protect your ecosystem? Okay, so we're looking at an ecosystem. So if we're looking at ecosystem, I might be looking at an image. So I might ask them to interpret an image. So interpreting an image is a skill. If I'm asking them to list the different, for example, consumers and producers in an ecosystem, this is a skill. If I'm asking them to draw a food chain or a food web, this is a skill, and I connected it to my knowledge. Okay? So these are skills that we can actually write questions about. Predict the consequence of an unhealthy lifestyle. Again, this is a skill. Okay? So we talked about knowledge and we talked about skill. Now we come to the other part, which is the understanding. You have different terms for it. Sometimes I might say it enduring understanding. It might be conceptual understanding, generalizations, big ideas. They all mean the same. Usually in every learning process, you start with the foundation, which is the skill and the facts that we know. Because I'm a concept-based trainer, I usually tell my teachers, try to associate it with a concept. So when we associate our facts with a concept and we looked at it from that skill, what do? We start connecting between those concepts in order to reach a big idea that the students will understand. So whenever looking at understanding, what do I understand? Which is the big idea, or that represents a relationship between the concepts. So we can start with, we understand that, or students understand that heat transfers energy. This is a big idea in science. Authors build plot twists to create suspense. This is a big idea in languages. Conflicts may create turning points in history. These are big ideas or generalizations that are actually a result of connecting the understanding from two concepts into one statement. So, how about now we ask a question that assesses our understanding or the student's understanding in our discipline? Put these two concepts in a question. For example, what is the relationship between style and the type of genre? This is a conceptual question. So when students understand it, they find out the details, they would actually give you a generalization. So they tell you that sometimes the type of genre may affect the style or the techniques that the author is using. Okay, so this is an understanding. So every time we think about understanding, the connection between the concept is a statement that reflects the understanding or the connection between two concepts. So we talked about what do teachers assess? We assess knowledge, we assess understanding, and we assess skill. Whenever we talk about knowledge, we're talking about terms, facts. Whenever we talk about skill, it's the smallest actions that we ask our students to do. If you don't know your skills, it's fine, don't worry about it. Just go to Common Core, any program, you would see a list of skills that are already there listed for you. Understanding, big ideas. Generalization, enduring understanding. Okay, these will help you. So if we're looking for what is a market system, good. What is a market system? We need to connect them. So system is a concept. So I might say, how does the consumers how do the consumers, for example, reaction toward the product affect the marketing system? Author's background affect their style of writing. Definitely, that's a very good generalization. When we're looking, what is the connection between proper and improper fractions in order to create the simplest form? Okay, so we're looking at forms and fractions as concepts because math is a conceptual language. So now that we've talked about what do teachers assess, we're moving to why do we actually assess? So why do we think teachers we assess other than the administrations? The administrators, they actually ask us to assess, or we need to report our students' understanding in some way and show it to the parents. Why do we actually assess? We assess because we need to monitor the learning process that's going on. So I need to assess my students' prior knowledge. What do my students already know? I need to assess my student learning at a specific time throughout the unit because we're learning, we're going through our learning experiences. But how do I know that my students are actually grasping the knowledge, grasping the understanding? They already are improving in the skills that they have. So I ask myself, what do students now know? What do students understand? What can students do? To what extent is the learning, the know, the understand, and the do is accurate? And it aligns with the grade level expectation. This is something that we always need to keep in mind. The grade level expectations, because there is an outcome that we need to reach. We assess our students' next level of understanding. Okay, so they have the knowledge, they know the terminology, they are proficient in the skills that they're working on, that they developed. They've reached the understanding and the connection between the concepts. So what do we do now? Is this it? The next level of learning. We always tell our teachers we need to connect the learning that's happening in the classroom to the outside world. So how do we do that? So to what extent can our students transfer their learning into new situations? So this is why we assess. Okay, so we need to connect our thoughts together. We know what to assess and we know why do we assess. So why is it important for teachers to know what to assess and why do we assess? Why do you think? Use the chat. So we assess the teaching and the learning process, true. So why do we really need to know what am I assessing now? And why do I need to assess it? How does that help you as a teacher throughout your learning journey? How does it help you while you're teaching your unit? To reflect on the teacher's teaching methodology. That's interesting. Yes, so it's one way of giving feedback to the teacher herself. To plan forward. Exactly. So to take when we analyze what do we have, and then we plan forward. How can I improve my students even further? How can I improve the learning that is happening? What happens now to your learning, to the learning experiences you're designing, to inform the learning community? Do you think your learning now or your learning experiences becoming more, let's say, specific? They're more directed toward a specific idea or towards a specific understanding that we need to have. What do you think about the evidence that you're getting from your students? It helps in standardization with other teachers as well. True, it helps us with standardization because I know what I'm looking for in the evidence of my students. I'm more aware. So the teacher already knows, she has in the back of her mind, this is what I need to have. What am I assessing? Do I have the evidence of it? My students, did they reach it or not? And why am I doing that? So why is it important now to think critically about the purpose of assessment? Why do you think we as teachers, we cannot simply say, today I need to do an assessment? Why does this sound off? So why do you think that? Purpose. Let's connect everything we're doing. We know what we're assessing. We know why we're assessing. We know that if I connect the what and the why, my assessment becomes more reflective towards my teaching methodology. I can plan forward to know whether the students are ready for the next concept, to inform my learning community, to reach our goal. Because if I know my purpose is for my students to reach that understanding, my learning, my teaching experiences within the classroom, everything I'm designing in the classroom is to make sure that I'm assessing that learning that takes place. And that will inform me if my students are ready for the next move. Interesting discussions. Thank you all for participating in the chat. So we already went into what do teachers assess? Why do we assess? Now we're going to go to, let's say, the gist of it. How do teachers assess? When we're looking how do teachers assess, we have different types of assessments. So we have assessments for learning, assessments as learning, and assessments of learning. All these types of assessments, they're purposeful and they take place throughout the learning journey. Some of them happen at the beginning of the unit, some of them duration of the unit, and some towards the end of the unit. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at each one specifically, look at different examples that can actually help you when you're planning. So assessments for learning. Whenever we talk about assessments for learning, we're talking about formative assessments and diagnostic assessments, ongoing, actionable. Now, some teachers, they might tell you, I'm doing diagnostic at the beginning of the unit, and that's it. This is where we need to clarify some misconceptions. Diagnostic assessments can happen anytime within the unit. Why? Because every time throughout the unit, you're presenting your students with a new topic or a new idea or a new concept that you need to actually activate their prior knowledge. What do they know about it? So I need to assess what do they have before. So when you plan your unit, plan in detail and plan for micro, let's say, diagnostic assessments that you have. It can be as simply, just like I said, it's a blob tray. I need to know what you're doing. Or I can show you an image and ask you to interpret it. That's diagnostic. Or I can ask you a question. Please, what does that word mean? This is a diagnostic. I need to know, what do you know about the topic? And we have formative assessments that are usually ongoing throughout the unit. Formative assessments, they can be formal and they can be informal. Informal formative assessments, this means you don't have a criteria for it. You can do it anytime throughout the unit. You're simply trying to assess a simple understanding or a simple knowledge that your students gain, or sometimes a skill. To what extent are your students proficient in it? The minute you say it's a formal assessment, this means this will lead to your summative assessment. It will help you gain more details, more evidence into how your students stand regarding to that information. So always ask yourself, what is my purpose? Am I assessing knowledge, skill, or understanding, or am I assessing a combination of all? Because sometimes I might do diagnostic simply because I'm assessing knowledge, terminology. They need to know it before they actually start my unit. certain skills, because if they know that skill, it is required within my task. If I'm asking them to write a narrative, so I need to think about, do they know how to describe a setting? Do they know how to create events? Okay, so how can we do it? We can give them graphic organizers. It doesn't have to be something within writing, because simply with the minute you say formative diagnostic, teachers immediately think tons of writing and I have to correct it. Let's clarify that. You can have writing pieces, this is fine, but at the same time, you can use graphic organizers. They're a wonderful tool. Why? Because I know my purpose. If my purpose is simply, I need to know, do my students know the meaning of a terminology, or do they know meaning of a concept? I can use a Fryer model, which is a graphic organizer, simply because of that. So they don't have to write an essay about it. I can use a mind map. I can use chart. I can use sorting chart. I can give them list of terms and I ask them sort them. What are examples? What are non-examples of that concept? I can give them 1 or 2 inquiry questions that they need to answer. Exit card, admit slips, bold strategy, reflecting connections between concepts. What do I know about that concept? Let's connect it with another concept, write down your details. How can I connect that concept? For example, place it in an authentic situation. I can give them, for example, a case study and ask them questions about it. I can give them a narrative and ask them questions. I can give them writing a narrative and then ask them about their choices as authors, because I need to check their understanding. Do they understand that we as authors, we use specific style in order to reach our purpose? I can give them lab investigations. For example, this is one of teaching strategies I used to use last year. I haven't used it yet this year. See, this is simply, I used to use it for exploring a concept. It's like one of the strategies we used to use when we do concept attainment. So if I'm looking at the concept of diversity and I need to check my students' understanding of it, I can give them the definition. So I state the definition, I write the definition that my students need to know, and I ask them, how about you elaborate about it using your own terminology? How about you give me examples? So I need to know, what do they already know about diversity? Give me an example, or give me a non-example about diversity. Explain it for me. How about you illustrate it? Draw an example, create a metaphor, or they can simply log online. Find me an image that actually represents diversity. Why do you think it represents diversity? In this way, I'm assessing my students' understanding of the concept diversity or the terminology diversity before I actually start, for example, reading To Kill a Mockingbird, which is talking about discrimination, which is connected to diversity. Or I can use another concept attainment chart, and this you can have 2 options. Usually in science, we teach students about living, non-living objects. So you can either give them 2 charts and tell them this is a living and this is non-living. What do you think the attributes of living? And what do you think the attributes of non-living? So instead of telling them that in order to consider this object a living object, it has to breathe, it has to grow, it has to change size, for example, how about you give them different examples and they are the one who comes with the attributes, because this will help you later on in identifying different living and non-living in different situations and in different contexts. Or you might give them scrambled images and you ask them, sort it out into 2, for example, categories. What would be these 2 categories? Write them down, explain your understanding. So the students will be coming up, and you can ask them even to give you more complex examples as well. They can give you non-examples now. This is a concept attainment chart. So it's a brainstorming. You can use it as a diagnostic at the beginning, for example, if you're unit, and you can use it as a formative assessment. Both, they actually work. Okay? Sample tracking thinking protocol. Again, can be used, all these techniques, they can be used as diagnostic, they can be used as formative. You create a web to capture your deepening understanding. So usually we start our inquiry unit with a question. So give them the question. What do you understand about the relationship between this concept and this concept? Have students write down their initial understanding. So this is a diagnostic. I know, what do they know about the relationship? Now we begin our learning. Keep the paper with you. Keep it with the students. Post it anywhere in the classroom. Give them the first study case. Read it. Discuss it in the classroom. What are the new ideas that you have? What are the new concepts that you have? have them jotted down using one color. And then after you go through the second case study, ask them to add, for example, more ideas, more details in a different color. Third case study, it depends on how many case studies you want to do within your lessons. At the end of the inquiry, ask students, review your web, reflect on your own thinking now. So you're looking, this can be actually as well a summative task. And you ask them to create a generalization to express what you already understand. So I started with what seems for the student as a diagnostic with the initial understanding. I gave them first case study, second case study. So I'm doing more formative assessment because I'm assessing on my students' understanding their concept. Every single time they're adding more details about it. And then towards the end, they're looking at everything that they've learned. They're reviewing it, they're reflecting on their learning, they're thinking that deepens over time, and then they're crafting a generalization of understanding. So this can be a summative task. So a summative does not have to be something writing. It doesn't have to be an essay. Mind maps, graphic organizers, easier way to track your students' understanding. This is one of my favorite ones. Language teachers, do you like it? Art teachers, do you like it? What concepts live here? What I used to do is after I explored all the concepts, I need to make sure that, yes, my students, they understood these concepts. Because I tell them, once you learn a concept, I'm going to the new unit, it's not about forgetting the previous concept. It's about connecting everything that you're learning. And sometimes you're taking some of the learning that happened in different disciplines and you're actually connecting it to your own. So I give them an image and I ask them, what are the concepts that are actually living there? Tell me, explain, how do you think this is a concept? You might use an image, you might use a quote, you might use a video, piece of news, headline, history documentary. It can be an article, and ask them, what concepts do you see in this piece of paper? This will draw your students' attention to the structure that every time in every situation, and will create a habit for them. How can I access my own prior knowledge? And how can I actually retrieve everything that I've been learning about and place it in something new? So this is called what concepts live here. So far we looked at assessments for learning. Now we're going to go for assessments as learning. Simply, it goes on throughout the unit. Self-assessment, peer assessment, metacognitive, simply. How can we ensure our students that are becoming self-regulated learners? How can I actually help my students reach a degree where they evaluate themselves, they evaluate their learning, they set their own learning goals, and they check the criteria, and they ask them, how can I improve my own work? They come up with, how can I improve my work? This is what I need to do. This is my plan. You can do checklist. Ask them to reflect on their achievement. You can ask them for feedback from their peers or with their teachers, conferencing, asking questions. You can give them reflection prompts to work on. Let's look at some examples. MYP teachers, you'll find this already beneficial. These are reflection questions from Principles MYP, Principles to Practice. This was updated in September 2022. So you might give them reflection prompts. You can have reflection prompts to consider personal learning strategies. What can I do to become more efficient, more effective learner? So they evaluate themselves. Do I need to take more notes? Do I need to evaluate which method I'm using for my own note taking? Do I need to evaluate how am I actually watching news or how am I interpreting things? How can I become more flexible in my choice of the learning strategies? Because we all know that the minute you're in MYP or the minute you're in PYP, you've done a lot of strategies over the year. Keep a track. So let the students memorize them. They already know that strategy, they're aware of it. What can I use? What factors are important for helping me learn well? Do I need to revise every night? Do I need to do scheduling? Do I need to structure the information in a specific manner that will make it much easier for me to know? Mind maps. And then I might consider ATL skill development. What can I already do? How can I share my skills to help my peers who need more practice? What will I work on next? So students, they're developing their own metacognitive. They're thinking about their learning and what do they actually need. What did I learn about today? What don't I understand yet? What questions do I have now? These are good prompts that you can give your students, either at the end of the session for them to keep on thinking about the learning that happened, what do they need to do, or you just finished a formative and you want your students to reflect on the results of the formative. What does this result actually tell me about myself as a learner? What did I do? How did I actually study for the formative? Was my studying strategy, did it work? Did it not? Was it efficient? Was it not? So what can I do in order to change that? If you're looking for feedback, teach students how do they do feedback, because sometimes students are crucial and they're giving very harsh comments. So we need to tell them how you're going to be caring and responsible and principled, even when you're giving feedback. One of the methods is the tag feedback method. I used to teach it to my students. So tell me something that you liked, ask a question, and give a positive suggestion, because the minute you tell students we're giving feedback, they're looking for every single mistake that is there. And the idea, this is not what we're looking for. Tell me something that is really, you've done really well in it. Let me ask you a question. How can we improve this? If your students haven't done that before, it's usually a good way to give them sentence starters. I think your example here, how about this? Think about adding this. I'm a bit confused about the meaning of the word. Why did you use that? So we teach our students to be caring when we're actually teaching them methods, how to give feedback to other students. Another way, PYP teachers, they love that, checklist. They're a very handy way in order for you to do it. Give a student a checklist. Did you achieve that? Did you not? So ask students, you finished your assessment? Interesting. How about you use the checklist to self-evaluate yourself? Do you have a clear introduction that has background information about the topic? Yes or no? Do you have at least 2 paragraphs in your body? So if you said something that is no, this is a very good chance for you that you need to go back, evaluate your work, edit your work before you actually give it to the teacher. So we're actually teaching our students how you can self-evaluate yourself. When you self-evaluate yourself, if you're an MYP teacher and we give the criteria for the students and the task-specific rubric, ask them self-evaluate yourself. But don't stop there. Go back to your work. If you already noticed that I didn't do well in that strand, go back to it, edit it before the teacher comes in and actually checks your work and give you the feedback. The idea is how you can improve by yourself. If I know that criteria, the criteria is given to me, use it for your own benefit and to improve. So these are different techniques that we can use for assessment as learning. Assessment of learning, this is usually the summative assessment. This usually comes at the end of the unit or usually at the end of the academic year. So it depends on your school's culture, your school structure, how do they actually do that? Usually there's a certain time in the unit where everyone is asked, you have to do a summative assessment. It usually help us identify if students are meeting their grade level standards. We usually have certain standards we're following. If you're an MYP, you have the task-specific rubric already there for you in your subject guide. If you're PYP as well, you refer to your own subject guide. You have the phases, for example, and the skills that students are reaching. So what do we do? These summative assessments, they're usually aligned with the program standards and practices and the discipline assessment objective. Usually these assessments, they assess skills, knowledge, understanding. 3, if you think your assessment is only assessing skills and knowledge, you're missing that part. So you might need to add a separate part for it that actually tells you, is your student presenting the understanding that you want? Is it met or is it not met? We usually ask our teachers to write it using a performance of understanding template. Probably grasp or draft. Most teachers, they either go for grasp or draft. And I'll show you what does they mean if you have zero clue about them. So don't worry. So if you're talking about grasp, we're talking about the G, which is what is the goal in your scenario? What is the role of the student? Who is going to be the audience? Because our students need to know that there's a connection between my role, my audience, and my product. This is the connection that we want our students to understand. What is the situation? What is the context? The beautiful scenario that we sit down and we set it together. What is the performance challenge? What do they need to produce? Because there has to be a production there. What are the standards that you're going to judge them in? If you're using raft, it's similar, just different terminology, different acronyms. You're talking about the role. What is the writer's role? Is he a critic? Is he an eyewitness? What is he? You're looking at your audience. Is it the teacher? Is it the class? Is it the community? Is it the wider community? What is the format? Are you writing a poem, an essay, a newspaper article, a diary entry, or you're creating your own website? And the topic, who is the subject of the learning? I'll show you two examples, one from PYP, one from MYP. So for PYP, teachers who are teaching MYP, you love that. This is an English language, mathematics, and UI PYP unit. I've done this with my grade 5 teacher last year. It's a grasp assessment. This is an assessment. So our students in grade 5, they were learning about finance. They had a unit where they're looking at finance, and we integrated authentic integration with the English language. So we said that our students need to reflect their understanding of finance by answering a set of questions sufficiently, and they have to support their claim by evidence. And this is where we see the language coming in. So we gave them a role, we gave them an audience, and we gave them a real situation. And this really happened because we struggled in the unit to find suitable material that we're going to teach our students in. So we said, as you read, view different videos and texts related to finance as grade 5 learners, we found the resources rather challenging and difficult. So we asked them to create teaching material that is appropriate to the age and the grade level of grade 5 students. So the next year for grade 5 students, they will be used. And they will be used to understand about money and finance. And their product was short videos. Because when we analyze our students' learning, we said most of them they're visuals. And we said this can be used for students when they go home. We can give them an assignment and they can read it and look at it. So it's a short video, 3 to 5 minutes, in addition to supporting visuals. And we told them what is the success criteria. So we're looking for specific knowledge related to the concepts that we explored. And we looked at the process of how we're presenting information and how we use the language. And we gave them specific steps that they need to do. But then in order to ensure that our students, yes, they're thinking about the learning, they're thinking about the product, that they didn't just submit the video and that's it, we're done. We asked them at the reflection, do you think that your video is going to be useful for grade 5 learners next year? So we asked them to evaluate their own product. What do you think of your own organization of ideas? Do you think it's going to be helpful? Is it going to build a deeper understanding for your students? And we asked them to evaluate the knowledge, the information that they discussed, the strategies that they've used. Do you think they're usable for grade 5, suitable for grade 5 students, or they're not? So this was a summative assessment for our students in grade 5. We integrated English, math, and UI. Here, the focus is more directly related to English, and we gave them specific steps they had to go through. This is an example of a grasp model. PYP teachers, this might be helpful for you. MYP teachers, we'll give you another example. This is a grade 8 MYP Year 3 Math and Design unit. It's an IDU unit. For people who don't know what is IDU, it's an interdisciplinary unit. I worked on it with my teachers as well, and thankfully they gave me the permission to share it. So the goal was for the students to design and create a 3D prototype while finding generalizations between surface area and volume. We know teachers in math, they explain surface area and volume, and we wanted to make it something rather interesting. How can we actually use surface area and volume in real life? So we gave them a whole scenario. We told them that in order to increase and promote the use of green energy in Jordan and in generating electricity, and we're going to reduce the cost on the Jordanian citizen, the ministry, they issued a contest, which is the Creative Solar Cells Competition. And we asked them that you need to design solar panels according to different placement shapes. And they have to use the dimensions calculated in order to design the prototype. So they had to use the math knowledge, combine it with the process of design, and they had to create solar panels. Some of them created solar panels that can suit a windowsill, that small. Some of them went a little bit bigger. And by the end, they reached an understanding that gave them deeper understanding of how we can use math and design to solve a problem in real life. Because yes, we need to lower the amount of energy and electricity that people are actually using. So this is a grade math, MYP, math and design summative assessment, another example on GRASP to give you an interesting idea. Why do we give these performance of understanding? Because we're trying to place the learning in an authentic situation, in a situation that, yes, our students are going to use that learning in solving a real world one. Now, I talked a lot about transfer and how do we actually create those assessments in order to achieve transfer, and students, they use their knowledge and understanding and skills in a new situation. But the idea is this is taught. You teach your students how to transfer. And how do we do that? This is a matrix of transfer. You can find it in Learning That Transfer by Julie Stern. The first step you do is you identify what are your concepts, what is your question, and then you connect it to your context. The context for MYP teachers, this is your global context exploration. If you're a PYP teacher, you're going to your interdisciplinary themes. So usually we start with something academic, something similar, but I'm only doing it within an academic classroom setting. There is no authentic audience, there isn't any impact. For example, I'm teaching my students biographies. They're reading a biography and discussing how this individual has certain competencies and how they actually present him or her as a leader. This is an experience, something that they're done in class. This is a classroom setting. So what I can do is I can take that learning. This is the first learning they're doing in class, normal. Give them a biography, ask them questions. Why is he a leader? Now, let's help our students transfer. We're going to take them into some real world application. So the students, they complete a task for a specific audience. And the audience could be, the experience could be potentially impactful. But the students, they do not see the evidence or the impact. It's a bit dissimilar to the original learning, but still they're able to see how can I actually transfer those concepts and how my learning actually apply. So I ask them, try to choose a figure. It could be locally, it could be globally. You can interview that person. And you can ask them to discuss their own experiences. You can ask them about their competencies and how do they present themselves as leaders within their community. So I'm still within the same boundaries. The first part, I started with a biography. We talked about that person as a leader. My second part, some real world application. You choose a figure. It can be locally, it can be globally. Interview them, read about them, and then tell me, why do you think this person is a leader? Now, if I want them to even transfer it more to something that is dissimilar, completely foreign to the learning experience, it has nothing to do with the original learning experience, and it's a world challenge that the students present solutions to it. I ask them, design a leadership program for students in your own school, your own classmates, and you can collaborate with someone in order for them to develop their competencies and their understanding of how they become a leader. See how I moved on with my matrix? This is transfer matrix. So I moved from something that is academic, something that is similar, to something that is slightly dissimilar. I'm moving to some real world application, and then I moved my students to something totally new, something totally dissimilar, something innovative, and something definitely that students can see the connection. Okay, and this is how we move our students into their transfer. Okay, hope you find this helpful. You can find more details about it in Learning That Transfer by Julie Stern. So far, what have we done? We talked about what do we assess, why do we assess, how do we assess, and we looked at the different strategies or tools that we can use into assessing, into creating assessments. So let's go back to the same block tray that we used at the beginning of the session. We said it was a diagnostic, now it's going to be a formative. So reflect on your chosen number. You had a specific number that you chosen before. Reflect on it and choose a number now that represents your understanding, your confidence towards assessment, and type it in the chat. Did your number change? Tell us. My number was this, for example, now it became this. What do you think? And now I moved from my diagnostic and I moved it into what? I moved it into a formative assessment. So now we're done, we're happy. We're joyful. We know what we need to assess. Good. We know how to design assessments, whether for learning, as learning. What do you think? Did your number change? Or are we still? I love the fact that most of us were collaborating before. Are you 12, 11, 17? You're collaborating with your friends in order to reach a higher number for your assessment. So you're more confident now in how to do assessment. 18, interesting. So you feel like you can apply it now, going on without the labels. Excellent. 15, wow. So everyone, we're learning. Yes, we're happy now. We know what we're doing. 18, interesting. So yes, now we have a buddy, definitely. From 16 to 10. So now you're happy. Okay, so instead of having someone to support you, now we can be all our own and we're enjoying our celebration of learning. Interesting. Thank you very much. And definitely, as always, we need to give you some resources. So these are some of the resources that you can actually use if you want. Transitioning to concept-based curriculum and instruction book, concept-based curriculum instruction and thinking classroom, learning that transfer, concept-based literacy lesson. You'll find a lot of units, a lot of lessons, a lot of interesting ideas for grasp, for assessment, and different types of assessment and strategies. And thank you all for your participation and hope you found this beneficial.
Thank you, Elyana. It was awesome, really. The kind of knowledge I've gained through knowing about the different prompts that you shared, it was amazing. I'm surely
Thank,
going to use them. And as we can see, we are also receiving very positive feedback from educators around the world. Thank you. And they loved it in between also, because there
thank
were
you very much.
certain things, because you are from MYP, I'm from PYP. So there were certain things which were similar, but there were many things which I really learned and wasn't aware about certain prompts that you shared and assessment tools that you shared.
Thank you. Glad you found this interesting. And thank you, everyone in the chat as well. If you need anything, if you have any question, anything that is unclear, please share in the chat. And definitely, if you post your question even later on, definitely I'm going to go back and I'm going to check it as well. Thank you very much for attending and thank you for your comments. And thank you very much,
Before
Anina,
you
as
go,
well.
before you go back, here is a token of appreciation from our side. Would love to see you again.
Definitely. Thank you very much. This is, I believe, this is our second time doing a session together. Hopefully, people enjoyed it and definitely found it beneficial. The whole idea from Teachers Tribe International Community is to share our learning together. Then this is the main idea. So if you've taken at least one or two ideas and you applied it in your classroom, please share it. Tag me. I'm on LinkedIn, so if you want to share it there. Tag me. Tell me how did your experience go. It's always a delight to see people sharing details about it.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you very much.